I am Owen Mitchell, 70 years old, and my life is built on a 30-year-old lie that I am only just beginning to uncover. 3 months after we buried my wife, Caroline, my children sat me down in a sterile lawyer's office. "Dad," my son Paul said, sliding a folder across the polished table, "it's time to sell the beach house." My daughter Beth agreed instantly. "It's useless, Dad. We're doing this for you." I just nodded, letting them think the old man was too lost in grief to argue. "You're right," I whispered. "You handle it." That night I packed a small bag, grabbed a rusted key I hadn't touched in 3 decades, and started the 12-hour drive to North Carolina. They think I'm visiting an old army buddy in Wisconsin. They think the house is empty and rotting. They have no idea I'm about to find out that their mother's entire life, and their own, was a carefully constructed betrayal. Before I continue this story, and believe me, what I found in that house will chill you to the bone, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever felt that the people closest to you were keeping a terrible secret. The lawyer's office in Chicago was cold, not the temperature, but the feeling. The glass and steel reflected a gray, unforgiving sky, and the muffled sound of traffic from 20 floors below felt like it was happening in another universe. My name is Owen Mitchell. I'm 70 years old, and for the past 3 months I've been trying to navigate this new, sterile world of being a widower. My life had become a checklist of administrative tasks: signing papers, closing accounts, calling insurance companies, trying to figure out who I am now that Caroline, my wife of 45 years, is gone. The grief isn't like a wave. It's a heavy, wet coat I can't seem to take off. My son Paul and my daughter Beth were sitting across from me at that polished mahogany table. They were supposed to be my support system. They were supposed to be grieving with me. But they just looked impatient. Paul, always the practical one at 45, cleared his throat, breaking the heavy silence. He pushed a glossy real estate brochure across the table, shoving aside the stack of probate documents I was supposed to be reviewing. "Dad," he said. His voice was firm, lacking the softness of sympathy. "It's time to sell the beach house." I froze. My eyes locked onto the picture. The A-frame house, the wraparound porch, the sea oats. Beth, my 42-year-old daughter, chimed in immediately. Her voice was bright, almost cheerful, as if she was suggesting we clean out the garage. "He's right, Daddy. It's just sitting there. It's a useless place." She leaned forward, placing her perfectly manicured hand on mine. "Think of the taxes, the insurance. It's a money pit. It's just a drain. Mom's gone. Let's just be done with it." A useless place. My breath caught in my chest. They didn't understand. They couldn't. To them, it was just property, an asset to be liquidated, a line item on a spreadsheet. To me, it was a graveyard. "That place," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I hadn't set foot in that house. Our house, in Outer Banks, North Carolina, for 3 decades. Not since the day that ripped my life in 2. 30 years ago, I wasn't Owen Mitchell, the Chicago-based consultant. I was a young, ambitious man with a dream. I had a partner, Vincent. He wasn't just my partner. He was my best friend. He was Caroline's brother. We were going to build an empire. And then one rainy Tuesday, he was gone, vanished, along with $200,000 of my life savings. It wasn't just $200,000. In today's money, it was everything. It was the down payment on our future. It was my children's college fund. It was the reward for years of risk and sacrifice. That betrayal didn't just steal my money. It stole my future. It crushed the man I was supposed to be. It's the reason we had to flee North Carolina, tail between our legs. It's why I had to crawl to Chicago, defeated and humiliated, and start over from nothing. I worked 18-hour days at a soul-crushing job, just to rebuild, just to give Paul and Beth the privileged lives they now took for granted. And that house, the beach house, was the epicenter of that earthquake. It was the last place I ever saw Vincent. The place where my trust in humanity, in family, died. And now my children wanted to sell it, like it was an old car. "It's a hassle, Dad," Paul pressed, seeing my hesitation. He mistook my paralyzed silence for simple grief. "It's just rotting away. Mom only went there, 4 times a year, just out of, nostalgia. But she's gone now. There's no reason to keep it." Nostalgia. That's what Caroline had always told me. She went there to remember the good times before Vincent destroyed us. She went there to grieve her brother, because she'd told me 25 years ago that she heard Vincent had died in poverty down in Bolivia. She cried for a week, and God help me. I held her. I comforted her. I believed her. I believed all of it. I looked at the brochure, at the smiling, impatient faces of my children. "You're right," I said, my voice hollow. It's just a house." I pushed the glossy brochure back across the polished mahogany. My hand was steady, but my voice came out low, rougher than I intended. "What's the hurry?" Paul let out an audible sigh. The kind of sigh that says, "Here we go again." He exchanged that quick, tired glance with Beth. The look they had been sharing a lot since the funeral. The "dad is getting old" look. The "we have to manage him" look. "Dad." Paul began leaning forward like he was explaining a complex stock portfolio to a child. "It's not a hurry. It's fiscal responsibility. That house is a relic. It's sitting on prime coastline, but the structure itself it's rotting, Dad. The salt air, the humidity. The roof probably hasn't been inspected since I was in high school. The foundation is likely shot." He started tapping the table with his expensive pen. Click, click, click. "It's costing us money every single month. Taxes in that county aren't cheap. Insurance. Utilities we're paying for on an empty house to fall apart. It is a bad asset. A hole in our finances." Beth immediately jumped in, playing her role. The soft one. The emotional one. She covered my hand with hers. Her skin was smooth. Her rings felt cold. "Daddy," she cooed, her voice dripping with a practiced, gentle concern. "We are doing this for you. We know you despise that place. We know what he did to you there." She always did that. She never said his name, Vincent, as if speaking it would summon his ghost right there in the office. "Why would you want to hang on to that memorial to your worst nightmare?" She continued, squeezing my hand. "We just want you to be free of it. We want to take this burden off your shoulders so you can grieve Mom in peace here in Chicago." She gave me that bright, tight smile. "We can sell it fast in this market. We'll take the money, split it, maybe put it into trust funds for the grandkids. Wouldn't that be a better legacy for Mom than letting her old house get eaten by termites?" It sounded so perfect, so logical. Paul handled the numbers. Beth handled the emotions. A perfectly executed plan. They had clearly rehearsed this. And yet, a cold knot tightened in my gut. I thought back. 25 years ago. I remember the phone call. Caroline had dropped the receiver, her face ashen. She'd found an old contact, a mutual friend, who had confirmed it. "He's dead, Owen," she'd whispered, collapsing into my arms. "Vincent. He died in Bolivia. Some kind of fever. He was broke. Alone." The wave of emotions that hit me then was complex. There was, God forgive me, relief. The monster who haunted my dreams was gone. But seeing Caroline break, that was real pain. She was devastated. She cried for days, not just for the brother she'd lost, but for the brother who had betrayed us. He died alone, Owen, she sobbed into my chest. After everything he did, he still died all alone. I held her. I told her it was over. I told her we were safe. I believed her. I believed her tears. I had always assumed those trips she took, 4 times a year, every year, regular as clockwork, were a pilgrimage, a way for her to visit the place where the 3 of us had been happiest before the betrayal, a way for her to confront the ghost of her brother and the ruins of my first dream. I never questioned it. Why would I? It was her way of processing a loss that was complicated. She was grieving the brother she loved and hating the man who had destroyed her husband. I respected that. I gave her the space to do it. I looked at Paul and Beth. Their faces were open, honest, the faces of children trying to help their grieving elderly father. "It's rotting," Paul had said, "a money pit." But Caroline had just been there, right before she got sick. 4 months ago, why would she keep visiting a rotting house? Why would she pay taxes and insurance on a useless place for 30 years? Why not just sell it herself a decade ago? "You're right," I said, my voice quiet. "It makes sense." Paul relaxed, sitting back in his chair. Beth squeezed my hand again. "See, it's for the best, Daddy." Their logic was sound. The problem was, my 70-year-old gut, the one that had been forged in betrayal and rebuilt with scar tissue, was screaming at me. It was screaming that their perfect logical explanation was a lie. My 70 years on this earth have taught me one fundamental truth. When a story is too neat, too perfect, it is almost always a lie. And the explanation my children had just given me was flawless. Paul's cold logic about finances, Beth's syrupy concern for my emotional well-being. It was a perfectly wrapped gift. But it felt wrong. It felt rehearsed. My intuition, the part of me that had survived Vincent's betrayal and rebuilt a life from ashes, was screaming. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the taxes. It wasn't even about my grief. This was about access. Why were they so desperate to sell and sell now, just 3 months after their mother's funeral? Why not let me grieve for 6 months or a year? And why were they so terrified of me going there if the house was just a rotting shell, an empty husk of bad memories? What did it matter if I poked around the ruins for an afternoon? What could possibly be in that house that they didn't want me to see? A squatter teenagers using it as a party spot? No. Their panic felt deeper, more personal. They were hiding something connected to Caroline. I had to be sure. I had to set a trap. I let the silence stretch out in that cold office. I looked down at the brochure in my hands, pretending to study the faded picture of the house. I could feel them watching me, waiting for me to sign the papers, to sign away the problem. I took a slow breath and looked up, forcing a look of weary resignation onto my face. "All right," I sighed. "You're right. You're both right. It's hard to let go of the last piece of her." Beth's face immediately softened into a smile of victorious pity. "Oh, Daddy, we know. We understand. This is the right thing to do. It's the last step in moving forward." "Yes," I said, nodding slowly. "Okay, I agree. Let's sell it." Paul visibly relaxed. His shoulders dropped. He started to gather his briefcase. He'd won. The old man was managed. "But," I said. I held up one finger. They both froze. Paul's hand stopped on his briefcase. Beth's smile wavered. "But what?" Paul asked, his voice tight. "I want to go down there. One last time." The shift in the room was instant. It was like a drop in cabin pressure. "Dad, why?" Paul snapped. "There is absolutely no point. It's a 12-hour drive just to look at a dump. Keepsakes, I said. The lie came easily. Your mother. She kept her old journals, the ones from before we were married, and her mother's pearls. She always said she kept them in the nightstand in the master bedroom. I want to look for myself, see if there's anything I want to keep before the realtors come in, and just throw everything in a dumpster. Just one last look. For me. The reaction was not just hesitation. It was violence. No, Paul shouted. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. He stood up so fast his expensive leather chair squeaked in protest. Beth looked like I had slapped her. Daddy, no, you can't. I feigned confusion, turning from one to the other. Can't? Why on earth not? It's still my house, isn't it? I'm still the owner. Paul was scrambling, his eyes wide with a panic that was far too intense for a simple trip. No, I mean it's not safe. He stammered, his words tumbling out. It's dangerous. I checked the county reports. There was a huge storm last month. A bad one. A nor'easter. It washed out the access road. The bridge is down. Beth, catching his cue, jumped in, her voice shrill and unsteady. He's right, Daddy. It's treacherous. The foundation could be compromised. You can't go alone. What if you fell? What if you got hurt out there all by yourself? We'd never forgive ourselves. I just stared at them. It was the worst acting I had ever seen. A washed-out road. A compromised foundation. They were inventing natural disasters on the spot. A storm, I asked, keeping my voice perfectly mild. That's strange. Caroline was just there 4 months ago, right before she got sick. She didn't mention any structural problems then. That was 4 months ago, Dad. Paul shot back, his face flushed. A lot can happen in 4 months on the coast. It's just not a good idea. We'll hire a local crew. We'll pay them to go in and pack up her things. We'll have them ship everything right here to Chicago. You don't need to lift a finger. I don't mind lifting a finger, Paul. I just want to see it with my own eyes. We forbid it, Beth cried out. Then immediately put her hand over her mouth, realizing her mistake. We strongly advise against it. For your health, the stress, the painful memories. It's just too much for you right now, Daddy. They forbid it. My own children were forbidding me from entering my own home, and that was it. That was the moment. The vague, gnawing suspicion in my gut hardened into cold, solid certainty. They weren't protecting me from a rotting house. They were protecting a secret that was inside that house, a secret they were willing to lie and shout and invent catastrophic weather events to keep. I looked at their terrified, frantic faces, the faces of two people desperately trying to keep a lid on a box that was about to explode. And I knew I had to be the one to light the fuse. I looked at their panicked, desperate faces, the terrible, clumsy acting. It was almost insulting. They really thought I was this simple, this broken. I let out a long, slow breath, a performance of a tired old man giving in. I let my shoulders slump. I rubbed my eyes. All right, I said. My voice was quiet, defeated. All right, you're right. I saw Paul's shoulders drop an inch in relief. Beth's tight, forced smile softened, believing she had won. If it's that dangerous, I continued, if the road is really washed out, then I guess you're right. It's just a silly idea. Too many painful memories down there anyway. I pushed the glossy brochure back toward the center of the table. You handle it. You do what you think is best. I paused, adding a final touch to the performance. Just see if her old journals are in the nightstand, will you? Before you let the realtors in. I'd like to have those. Beth rushed over to put her arms around my shoulders. "Oh, of course, Daddy. We'll save everything that matters. Thank you. You're being so strong. This is for the best." I just nodded, patting her hand. "I know, dear, I know." I went back to my apartment. The silence of the place was deafening. It had been 3 months, but the rooms still felt like they were holding their breath, waiting for Caroline to walk in. Her reading glasses were still on the side table. Her favorite blanket was still folded on the armchair. The smell of her hand lotion lingered in the bathroom. This was the home of the woman I loved, the woman who cried in my arms over her dead, traitorous brother. And now her children, our children, were lying to my face. I waited 2 hours, long enough for them to get back to their busy lives, convinced the old man was safely managed. Then I picked up the phone and called Paul. "Hey, Dad." He answered, his voice back to its normal, efficient clip. "Everything okay?" "I'm fine, son. I'm fine," I said. "I'm just calling to let you know. I think I'm going to get out of town for a few days. Just clear my head." I heard him tap on a keyboard. "Oh yeah, Dad. That's a great idea. You deserve it. Where are you thinking of going?" "You remember my old army buddy Jim Peterson up near Eau Claire, Wisconsin? He's been after me to visit for years. I think I'll just drive up there, sit on his porch, maybe do some fishing. Just be somewhere else for a little while." The alibi was perfect. Old widower, old army buddy. It was so plausible it hurt. "Dad, that's wonderful," Paul said, his voice brimming with false enthusiastic support. "You absolutely should go. Take as long as you need. Don't worry about a thing here. Beth and I will start making the calls about the house. You just go relax." "I will, son," I said. "Thank you. I'll probably leave in the morning." "Sounds good, Dad. Drive safe." I hung up the phone. I didn't go to the bedroom. I went to my old study. In the back of the bottom drawer of my desk, buried beneath 30 years of paid-off mortgages and old tax returns, was a small tin box. I hadn't opened it since the day we moved to Chicago. I pulled it out. The hinges creaked. Inside, on a piece of faded red velvet, sat a single, slightly tarnished brass key. The spare key to the side door of the beach house. The key I had kept as a reminder of what I'd lost and what I'd survived. My fingers, wrinkled and spotted with age, closed around it. It felt cold. Real. I walked into the bedroom and pulled a small canvas duffel bag from the closet. I didn't pack for Wisconsin. I packed for a reconnaissance mission. 1 change of clothes, a heavy-duty flashlight, my blood pressure medication, a granola bar. I walked out of my apartment, locked the door, and went down to the parking garage. I got into my old sedan, the car my children were always telling me to replace. I started the engine, pulled out onto the street, and merged into the heavy afternoon traffic. But I didn't turn north toward Wisconsin. I turned southeast, toward the highway, toward the long 12-hour drive to the Outer Banks. The city skyline faded in my rearview mirror, replaced by the flat, endless plains of Indiana. My hands gripped the wheel. My mind, which had been foggy with grief for 3 months, was now razor sharp. They were lying. They were lying about a storm. They were lying about a washed-out road. They were lying about a rotting house. They were desperate to keep me away from it. But why? My mind raced through the possibilities. What were they hiding? Had some vagrant taken up residence, a squatter? It was possible, but that didn't explain the level of sheer panic in Paul and Beth. You call the sheriff to handle a squatter. You don't invent natural disasters. So what then? Had they already sold it? No. My signature was needed. I was the owner. The truth had to be something worse, something they knew I could never, ever forgive. My mind kept circling back to Caroline. Her 4 trips a year, her nostalgia, her tears. What if her trips weren't about grieving her dead brother? What if— I shook my head, trying to banish the thought. It was too monstrous, too insane. But the question had taken root. What was in that house? Who was in that house? I pressed my foot down on the accelerator. The dark highway stretched out in front of me. I had 12 hours to drive, and I knew with a certainty that chilled me to my core that I was not driving toward a house. I was driving toward a 30-year-old secret, and it was going to be so much worse than a squatter. The headlights cut two small, lonely beams into the endless black of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. 3 a.m. The road was empty save for a few long-haul trucks, their red taillights like distant sleeping eyes. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The rhythmic thump, thump, thump of the tires on the asphalt was the only sound, a drumbeat pulling the past into the present. You don't forget a betrayal like that. You don't get over it. You just build a new life on top of the rubble. You pour concrete over the crater and pretend it's a solid foundation. But the chasm is always there, right beneath your feet. 30 years. It felt like a lifetime. It felt like yesterday. Vincent. He wasn't just my partner. He was family. He was Caroline's older brother. The charming one, the one with the easy laugh and the silver tongue. I was the practical one, the builder. He was the dreamer, the salesman. "We'll be rich, Owen," he'd said, slinging his arm around my shoulder. "You and me and Caroline. This coast is our oyster." And I believed him. I trusted him. I loved him like the brother I never had. Our company, Outer Banks Designs. It was my first child. We built custom beach homes, beautiful airy things that respected the dunes. I poured every ounce of my sweat into it. And I poured in every dollar, my savings, my father's inheritance, everything. $200,000. It sounds like a lot now. Back then, it was a fortune. Today, it'd be what? $700,000. It was everything. I remember walking into the office on that rainy Tuesday. The same day my life in Chicago began, though I didn't know it yet. The office was empty, not just of people, but of furniture. The desks were gone. The architectural drawings were gone. The phones were gone. Just a single yellow legal pad on the floor in the middle of the room. On it, Vincent had scribbled 6 words. "I'm sorry, Owen. It's just business." It wasn't just business. It was a crucifixion. I went to the bank. The accounts were empty. Every last cent. Drained. Overdrawn. He'd taken out a line of credit in the company's name right before he vanished. The bank, the suppliers, the subcontractors, they weren't coming for Vincent. He was a ghost. They were coming for me. I was ruined. Utterly, completely ruined. I was 39 years old with a wife and 2 young children, and I was worse than broke. I was buried in debt that wasn't even mine. The shame. It was a physical weight. It crushed my chest. Having to go home to Caroline. Having to tell her that her brother, her own blood, had just destroyed us, that he had stolen our children's future. I remember her face. The disbelief, the horror, the tears. She'd collapsed. She'd cursed his name. She'd sworn she would never forgive him. And I believed her. We declared bankruptcy. We lost the beach house. Or so I thought. The bank seized it. But then at the last minute, Caroline's parents, in a final act of trying to save their daughter's dignity, bought it back from the bank at auction. They gave it to Caroline, put it in her name, free and clear. "A safety net," her father had said, his eyes filled with pity for me. So the children will always have something. I couldn't even look at it. I refused to set foot in it. It was a monument to my failure. We left North Carolina a week later with our clothes in garbage bags and maybe $300 in my pocket. We fled to Chicago, a place where no one knew our names, where no one knew the word Vance was synonymous with failure and humiliation. And I started over. I worked. God, how I worked. 18 hours a day, sometimes 20. I took a job as a foreman for a commercial construction firm. A brutal, thankless job that paid the bills. I left before the sun came up. I came home long after Paul and Beth were asleep. For 10 years. 10 solid years of my life. I didn't see my children grow up. I missed baseball games. I missed ballet recitals. I missed their childhoods. All because of him. All because I had to dig my family out of the $700,000 hole Vincent had thrown us into. I rebuilt our life. I put them through college. I gave Caroline the comfortable life she deserved. I did my duty. The truck in front of me signaled, pulling me from the memory. I was in Ohio now. The sky was turning a faint, sick-looking gray in the east. I hadn't slept. I wasn't tired. The rage, the 30-year-old rage, now fresh and hot and aimed at my own children, was a better fuel than caffeine. They knew. They knew what that house represented, and they were lying to keep me out of it. The sun was high over West Virginia when the pure hot rage began to cool. It did not disappear. It just crystallized. It settled deep in my stomach, turning into something cold, sharp, and focused. My anger at Paul and Beth was simple. It was betrayal. It was greed. I could understand that. What I could not understand, what my mind kept circling back to like a tongue probing a sore tooth, was Caroline, my wife, my partner, the woman who had wept in my arms. I was there. I saw her. I held her as she shook with a fury that matched my own. He destroyed us, Owen. She had choked out her face, buried in my shoulder. He destroyed you. After everything, my own brother. I hope I never see his face again. I hope he rots. I believed her. I believed those tears. They were the glue that held us together as our world fell apart. And I believed her 25 years ago. I remember the phone call. She'd found an old mutual friend from back home. She dropped the receiver, her face ashen. "He's dead, Owen," she'd whispered, collapsing against the kitchen wall. "Vincent. He died in Bolivia. Some fever. He was broke. He died all alone." I had felt relief. God forgive me, I felt relief that the monster was finally gone. But Caroline was devastated. She wept for a week, and I held her. I comforted her. I told her the nightmare was finally, truly over. But 4 times a year, every January after the new year, every April when the spring came, every July in the heat of summer, every October when the tourist season ended, she would pack a small overnight bag. "I just need to go, Owen," she'd say, her eyes distant. "I just need to sit on the porch and remember and be sad. It's the only place I can do it." Nostalgia. That's what Paul called it. That's what I had called it in my own mind for 30 years. I thought she was grieving the man her brother was before he became a monster. I thought she was visiting the ghost of our old life, the dream he had murdered. I respected her grief. I gave her the space to process a loss that was complicated. But does nostalgia require that much maintenance? Can you visit the grave of your worst memories 120 times 120 trips to a place that symbolized my deepest humiliation? A place I refused to even look at on a map. The cold knot in my stomach tightened. The car ate up the miles through Virginia. If the house was rotting, as Paul insisted, what was she visiting termites if the access road was washed out? How did she get there just 4 months ago, right before she got sick? And then the thought, The one I had been actively violently pushing out of my mind since the lawyer's office. The one that was too heavy, too dark, too impossible to even consider. No. I hit the steering wheel with the heel of my hand. No. She wouldn't. She couldn't. She loved me. She was my partner. She held my hand as we rebuilt our lives from the very ashes he left behind. She would not protect him. She would not lie to me. Not like that. Not for 30 years. The thought was insane. It was the product of a grieving, sleep-deprived 70-year-old mind. Vincent was dead. Dead in Bolivia. Caroline visited a graveyard of memories. My children were just greedy, trying to liquidate an asset and lying badly to do it because they thought I was a fragile old man. That had to be the truth. But my gut that had survived Vincent, that had survived 10 years of 18-hour days, it whispered that the truth was something far, far worse. The air changed. I could smell it before I saw the water. The sharp, clean, unmistakable tang of salt and decay. I crossed the Wright Memorial Bridge, the long, low expanse over the Currituck Sound. The water was a flat gray blue. I saw the familiar sign, Nag's Head, Kill Devil Hills. I drove right past the turnoff for my street, the street that led to the house. I could not go there. Not yet. I was an investigator now. I was a man betrayed, and I needed evidence before I walked into that house. If I was wrong, if I burst in and found nothing but cobwebs and rotten floorboards, I would be the paranoid old fool they all thought I was. But if I was right, I needed ammunition. When you are going to war, you do not show up unarmed. Paul and Beth had given me my weapons. They had given me their lies. Lie number 1. It's a money pit, Dad. The taxes. Lie number 2. It's rotting. It's a drain. I parked my old sedan in the public lot behind the courthouse, a small, unassuming brick building. I felt the humid coastal air wrap around me as I stepped out of the car. My legs were stiff from the drive. I didn't go to the house. I didn't go to the police. I walked slowly, but with a purpose I hadn't felt in months, toward the double doors of the Dare County Tax Assessor's office. I needed to see just who had been paying for this useless house. The Dare County Tax Assessor's office hadn't changed in 30 years. The same dull beige walls, the same flickering fluorescent lights that cast a sick, buzzing glow on everything. The same smell of old paper dust and weak burnt coffee. Time moved differently here, thick and slow like molasses. I stood in the short line, my heart thumping a strange, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I felt out of place in my travel-rumpled clothes. The woman in front of me was arguing about a zoning variance for a new dock. This was stupid. What was I even doing? Paul was right. I was a grieving old man chasing shadows. The taxes were probably delinquent. The house was probably a wreck. I was about to embarrass myself. Next, a flat voice called out. I stepped up to the high counter. The clerk, a woman in her late 50s with enormous glasses and a name tag that read Sharon, looked up at me without interest. Can I help you? Yes, I said, clearing my throat. My voice sounded rusty. I'd like to check the property tax records for my house. I'm the owner. Owen Mitchell. I gave her the address on Beachcomber Drive, the one I hadn't said aloud in decades. Mitchell. She repeated, her fingers tapping slowly on the old yellowed keyboard. Owen, right. Let's see here. This was it. She was going to pull up the file and tell me I owed thousands in back taxes and penalties. She would confirm Paul's story, and I would get back in my car, drive the 12 hours to Chicago, and sell the godforsaken house, finally putting the past to rest. Here we are, she said. She turned the monitor slightly toward me, though it was still mostly obscured by her large potted fern. Beachcomber Drive. Yes. A-frame, 3-bed, 2-bath. That's the one. That's it, I said. I'm looking for the outstanding balance. My son. He's been handling the finances, and he mentioned we were behind. I just want to see what the total damage is. Sharon adjusted her glasses and clicked the mouse a few more times. She frowned. She clicked again. Behind, she said, looking at me over the rim of her glasses with genuine confusion. Mr. Mitchell, you're not behind on anything. My blood went cold. I'm not. No, honey, she said, tapping the screen. This account is in perfect standing. It's immaculate. Paid on the dot. Every quarter. For, well, looks like for the last 30 years. The room seemed to tilt. 30 years. Are you sure? I'm positive, she said with a hint of pride, as if she were personally responsible for my good financial standing. Not a single late payment, not one penalty. Paid in full right through the end of this fiscal year. Whoever's been handling this for you is doing a perfect job. A high-pitched ringing started in my ears. Paul's voice echoed in my head. It's costing us money. Taxes. A money pit. A blatant, bald-faced lie. My mind was scrambling. Who? I leaned in closer, dropping my voice. Can you tell me who made the payments or how they were paid? Sharon frowned again, not in confusion this time, but in suspicion. Sir, I'm not really supposed to give out detailed financial information like that. Privacy rules. I pulled my wallet from my back pocket. I fumbled with my driver's license, my fingers suddenly thick and clumsy. I slid it under the glass. That's me. Owen Mitchell. I'm the owner. It's my account. I have a right to know who is paying my bills. She looked at the license. She looked at me. She sighed, the bureaucratic battle won by my obvious distress. Fine. Let's see. Click. Click. Looks like it's paid automatically. A direct debit from a local account. First Coast Community Bank, account ending in 4091. I stared at her. First Coast Community Bank. I had never heard of it. I had never opened an account there. My money, our money, was all in Chicago. Is there a name on that account? I whispered. All I can see is the account number, sir. It's just an auto draft. But it's been paying this bill like clockwork for a very, very long time. I thanked her. I don't remember walking out of the office. I found myself standing on the sidewalk, the bright coastal sun, feeling like an interrogation lamp. Someone had been paying the taxes for 30 years, on time, from a secret local bank account. It had to be Caroline. But with what money, the money I earned, the money I sent her for household expenses, had she been siphoning off funds from our family account in Chicago? Diverting money I earned breaking my back for 10 years to pay for a house I refused to enter. And why pay for 30 years to maintain a rotting memorial? The first lie was shattered. Paul wasn't trying to save me money. He was trying to stop me from finding out that money was already being spent. My suspicion was no longer a vague feeling. It was a sharp, focused object, and it had a new target. I looked down the street. 2 blocks away, a small faded sign read, Dare County Utilities. Paul's second lie. It's rotting. It's a drain. It was time to see just how rotting a house could be. The Dare County Utilities office was a low, windowless brick building just 2 blocks from the courthouse. It had a peeling logo of a smiling lightning bolt on the door, a mascot for a company that held all the secrets. I walked in, the adrenaline from the tax office still pumping through my veins. The first lie had been exposed. It's costing us money. The taxes. A money pit. A complete fabrication. The account was immaculate. Now for the second lie. It's rotting away. It's useless. Abandoned. The inside of the utility office was just as bureaucratic as the tax office. A young man with a bright manufactured smile and a name tag that read Cody greeted me. "How can I help you, sir?" I recited my rehearsed lines. I was Owen Mitchell. I was the owner. My wife had passed. My son was supposed to be handling things. I was worried the bills had piled up. I was here to settle the account. I slid my driver's license under the glass partition. Cody's fingers flew across his keyboard. "Ah, yes, Mr. Mitchell. Beachcomber Drive. I see the account right here." I leaned in, playing the part of the confused, grieving old man. I'm afraid it's probably a mess. The house has been empty for a very long time. It's just rotting. You know, I'm assuming the power was shut off years ago. I'm just here to pay whatever reactivation fees there are so the realtors can show it." Cody looked up from his screen, his brow furrowed in genuine confusion. "Shut off, sir? Why would it be shut off? This account is in perfect standing. Paid every month. On time." The blood in my veins turned to ice. It is. Yes, sir. Looks like it's on an automatic draft. From First Coast Community Bank. Account ending in 4091. The same secret account. Caroline's account. "I see," I managed to say, my throat tightening. "Well, that's a relief. Could you tell me what the recent bills have been? I assume it's just a minimal service fee, just to keep the pipes from freezing." Cody turned his monitor toward me. "Minimal, sir, not exactly. This account is, it's very active." I stared at the numbers. They blurred. I blinked, forcing them into focus. The bill for last month was $247. The month before, $262. The month before that, $255. These were not the bills of an empty house. These were the bills of my house in Chicago. That's very high," I whispered. "How is that possible?" Cody shrugged, tapping the screen. "Well, it's an all-electric house, sir. And looking at the usage chart, the air conditioning, it's been running pretty much constantly for the last 3 months. It's high, yeah, but it's pretty average usage for a family. You know, for someone living there full-time." Living there. Full-time. Paul's voice sharp and panicked. "It's dangerous. The foundation is compromised." Beth's voice shrill and false. "It's useless. Daddy, Mom only went 4 times a year." Lies. All of it. A cascade of lies. My eyes scanned the invoice, my mind racing. Then I saw it. A bundled charge. A line item that made no sense at all. What is this?" I asked, my finger trembling as I pointed to the screen. "This Premier bundle." "Oh, that," Cody said, smiling. "That's the cable and internet package. Looks like you've got the works." "The works?" "Yeah." He clicked his mouse. "You've got the Platinum package. 500 channels, HBO, Showtime, Cinemax, all the sports networks. And..." He clicked again, his eyebrows raising in professional appreciation. "Wow. And you've got the fiber optic gigabit internet. That's the fastest speed we offer. Most folks out here don't spring for that unless they're running a home business or have a couple of serious online gamers in the house." I stopped breathing. Gigabit internet, fiber optic, HBO, air conditioning running non-stop. In a rotting house. In an abandoned house. A useless house that my children were forbidding me from visiting because it was dangerous. Who needs the fastest internet money can buy in a house that's falling into the sea? Who needs a premium cable package to watch the walls rot? This wasn't a squatter. This wasn't a mistake. This was a long-term, comfortable, expensive arrangement. Caroline. Her trips. Her nostalgia. Her secret bank account. She hadn't been visiting a memory. She had been visiting a person who had been living in my house, on my dime, for God knows how long. My children hadn't just lied to me. They had insulted my intelligence. They were part of it. They knew. I felt a sudden violent nausea. "Sir?" Cody asked, his cheerful expression fading. "Mr. Mitchell, are you all right? You look like you've just seen a ghost." I gripped the edge of the counter. I think, I whispered, my voice a dry rasp. I think I might have. I turned and walked out of the office, leaving Cody staring after me. I didn't care. The tax office was one lie. This was the second. There was only one stop left to make. The lies were confirmed. Now I needed a name. I walked past my car, my feet moving on their own. I knew where I was going. 3 streets over. The small white cottage with the blue shutters. The one where Mrs. Henderson had lived for as long as I could remember. My old neighbor. It was time to find out who she thought had been living in my house all these years. I don't remember the 2-block walk from the utility office. It was like my feet knew where to go, but my mind was floating somewhere above the pavement. I was a ghost in my own past. The tax office proved the when, 30 years. The utility office proved the how, full-time, expensive. Now I needed the who. I turned onto her street, Beach Road. And there it was. Mrs. Henderson's little white cottage, exactly as it had stood 30 years ago. The garden was immaculate, exploding with pink and red azaleas. And there she was, Martha Henderson. 90 years old, if she was a day, sitting in her white wicker rocking chair, on the screened-in porch, a tall glass of iced tea sweating on the table beside her. She saw me walking up the path. Her hand, thin and covered in liver spots, went straight to her chest. The rocking chair stopped with a sudden jolt. "Good Lord in heaven," she whispered, rising slowly from the chair. She fumbled with the latch on the screen door and pushed it open, her eyes wide. Owen Mitchell, is that really you?" I tried to smile. It felt like my face was made of cracked porcelain. "Hello, Martha. It's been a long time?" "A long time," she cackled, stepping out onto the porch steps. "It's been a generation, son. We all thought you'd never set foot on this island again." "Oh my goodness." She grabbed my arm with surprising strength and pulled me into a frail, papery hug that smelled of lavender and old books. "We were so sorry to hear about Caroline. A terrible loss. Just terrible. She was such a sweet, dedicated woman. A saint, really." "Thank you, Martha," I said, my voice thick. That's part of why I'm here. With her gone, my kids, Paul and Beth, they're handling her estate. They're thinking of selling the old house." Martha Henderson's face clouded with instant, genuine concern. She looked past me toward my property 2 houses down. "Sell the house, oh my. But goodness dear, where will he go?" The world stopped. The buzzing of the cicadas, the distant sound of the surf, everything went silent. I looked at her, and the ringing in my ears was so loud I could barely hear myself speak. I kept my voice perfectly, dangerously calm. "I'm sorry, Martha. Who go?" She looked at me, her head tilted, suddenly confused by my confusion. "Why, your relative, dear. The one who lives there." I just stared at her. I let the silence hang between us, heavy and awful. "My relative, oh heavens," she said, her hand fluttering to her mouth. "Oh dear. I hope I haven't spoken out of turn. I just always assumed. I mean, it's your house. I just assumed you knew." "Knew what, Martha?" I said, stepping closer. I kept my voice gentle. I needed her to keep talking. "Please, my kids, they've been handling everything since Caroline passed. I'm afraid they've kept me in the dark about a few things. I'm just trying to get a clear picture. Oh, those children, she huffed, buying my story completely. Always trying to protect the parents. Well, it's been so kind of you and Caroline, letting him stay there all these years, especially after, well, after everything that happened. My entire body went rigid. I felt the blood drain from my face. Him who? Who are you talking about, Martha? Why the man who lives there, she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. The sick gentleman. The one Caroline always came to visit. Oh, she was a saint to him. 4 times a year, regular as clockwork, her car would pull up. And sometimes your children, too, in these last few years. Dropping off groceries, checking on him. Such a good, decent family. My stomach turned over. Dropping off groceries. He doesn't get out much, she continued, lowering her voice conspiratorially. He's very quiet. A recluse. Keeps to himself. I think he's been quite unwell for a very long time. But I always thought it was the most Christian thing to do, for you and Caroline to take him in like that. To care for him. For free. All these years. After all. Family is family, right? I gripped the porch railing. The white paint was flaking, and a chip dug into my palm. Martha, I said, my voice a dry rasp. This relative, this sick man, did you ever catch his name? She pursed her lips, thinking. Her eyes gazed into the past. Oh, it's been so long. He never comes over. But I do believe I remember. Caroline mentioned it once. Years and years ago. Right when she first brought him. She said, yes, I remember now. She said, it's my brother Martha. It's Vincent. He's come home, and Owen and we're going to take care of him. I don't remember saying goodbye to Martha Henderson. I think I just nodded. I turned away from her porch, from her kind, concerned face, and I started walking. My legs felt like they were made of lead, but they moved. Vincent, she had said. Her brother Vincent. She brought him home. Not dead in Bolivia. Not a ghost. Not a memory. A sick man. A recluse. A relative living in my house. My mind just shattered. The 30 years of my life in Chicago, the 18-hour days, the missed baseball games, the grief I shared with my wife. It was not real. It was a play. A sick, elaborate stage play. And I was the only one in the audience who did not know the script. Caroline. My Caroline. She had not just lied. She had orchestrated. She had chosen him, the man who destroyed me, over me. And she had used my money, the money I earned rebuilding our lives, to fund his comfortable retirement. She had used my pain as the very shield to protect her secret. She knew I would never go to that house. It was the one place on earth I would never, ever look. It was the perfect hiding spot. And Paul. And Beth. Dropping off groceries. My children. The ones who sat in that lawyer's office, their faces masks of false sympathy, trying to protect me from painful memories. They were not protecting me. They were protecting him. They were protecting their inheritance. They just needed the old man to sign the papers so they could get rid of the family's dirty secret. The secret living in the house. A storm washed out the road. The foundation is compromised. The lies were so insulting, so clumsy. I was back in my car. I do not remember the walk. My hands were on the wheel. I turned the key. It was only 2 blocks. It felt like 12 hours all over again. I drove slowly like a man in a funeral procession. I turned onto the long, unpaved dirt road that led to the house, the one I had not seen in 3 decades. The trees had grown over, forming a dark green tunnel. I saw the gate first. The iron gate I had welded myself all those years ago. It was rusted, yes, The salt air had eaten at the paint. But Paul's lie was right there in the dirt. The gate was closed, but the dirt track leading up to it was rutted and fresh. 2 deep tire tracks. Not from a month ago. From today. Or yesterday. Someone was coming and going. Regularly. I stopped and the car got out and pushed the gate. The hinges screamed in protest, a long metal shriek. But they moved. They had not been changed. I drove the last 100 yards and pulled up onto the patchy, overgrown yard. And I saw it. Tucked away on the side, partially hidden by a large, overgrown oleander bush, was a truck. A late 90s Ford Ranger. Battered. Rust spots on the fenders. But the tires were new. It was someone's vehicle. I got out of my car and just stared. The house was not rotting. The grass was cut. Not manicured, but it was trimmed. Recently. The porch steps, the ones I built, were solid. They were not compromised. And the windows were not dark, empty holes. They had curtains. Faded, yellow-flowered curtains. The kind Caroline's mother used to have. Someone was living here. Someone was home. I walked to the side door. The one we always used after coming back from the beach, sandy and wet. I reached into my pocket. My hand was shaking. Not with fear. With a rage so cold it made my joints ache. I pulled out the small, tarnished brass key. The key I had not touched in 30 years. This was the moment of truth. They would not be that stupid. They would not be that arrogant. They would have changed the locks. Of course they changed the locks. This key was just a relic, a useless piece of metal. My trembling hand brought the key to the lock. The lock was old, coated in green patina and salt crust. I pushed the key in. It slid. It slid all the way in, with a smooth, oiled click that echoed the final snap of my breaking heart. It fit. They never changed the locks. They were so confident I would never return, so certain that my pain was a permanent barrier. They never even bothered. For a long moment I just stood there, my hand on the key. This was it, the end of the lie. I did not want to turn it. I wanted to get back in my car. I wanted to drive back to Wisconsin, the Wisconsin I never went to. I wanted to be the old, grieving widower, the man who knew nothing. But I could not. I turned the key. The mechanism clicked. The tumblers fell. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open. It swung inward with a low, soft creak. The smell hit me first. Not the smell of rot and mildew. Not the smell of an abandoned, sea-damaged home. It was the smell of life. Stale cigarette smoke. Old coffee. The faint, sweet smell of microwave dinners and dust. I stepped inside. Into the house I built. For the first time in 30 years, I pushed the door open. The creak of the hinges was loud in the silence of the afternoon. I stepped inside. And the lies, all of them, evaporated in an instant. The house was not rotting. The house was not abandoned. My son Paul had lied. My daughter Beth had lied. It was not the smell of mildew and decay that hit me. It was the smell of life. A thick, stale, human smell. Old cigarette smoke. The aroma of day-old coffee. A faint, greasy smell of microwaved food. The air was warm. Lived in. My eyes adjusted to the dim light. The curtains, the faded yellow-flowered curtains Martha Henderson mentioned, were drawn against the bright afternoon sun. Dust motes danced in the single beam of light coming from the door I had left open. It was not empty. It was cluttered. There were newspapers, weeks of them piled high on the dining table I had built with my own hands. There were dirty coffee mugs on the floor. An overflowing ashtray on the end table, a rumpled wool blanket thrown over the sofa. This was not a useless place. This was a home. I took another step, and I saw him. Through the main living room, past the cluttered coffee table, I saw the back of my armchair. My chair. The big leather one Caroline had bought me for my 35th birthday. The one I had left behind in the bankruptcy, the one her parents had apparently kept. It was turned toward the large picture window facing the gray, endless Atlantic Ocean. Someone was sitting in it. I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird. It was a man. Mrs. Henderson's relative. The sick gentleman. All I could see was the back of his head. Thin, almost skeletal, a halo of sparse bone-white hair. He was frail. He looked ancient. He was wearing an old ratty bathrobe. "Hello," I said. My voice was a croak. It did not sound like me. The figure in the chair stiffened. He had not heard me come in. He pushed himself up slightly, using the arms of the chair. He coughed. A deep, wet, rattling cough. The sound of a man who had smoked too many cigarettes. The sound of a man who was, as Martha said, very unwell. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, he turned. He turned to see who was in his sanctuary. My mind could not process what my eyes were seeing. It was impossible. It was a phantom. It was a trick of the light, a hallucination brought on by grief and a 12-hour drive. The man, the old sick, frail man sitting in my chair, was not a stranger. He was not a squatter. His skin was sallow, paper-thin, stretched tight over bones. His eyes were milky, clouded with cataracts. His face was a roadmap of deep, desperate wrinkles. This was not the charming, vibrant man I remembered. This was not the smiling, confident salesman who had stolen my life. But it was him. It was Vincent. My knees buckled. I grabbed the doorframe to stay upright. The air left my lungs in a silent rush. Dead. He was supposed to be dead. Dead in Bolivia. Dead for 25 years. But he was here. He was sitting in my chair in my house looking at my ocean. He stared at me. His watery, confused eyes tried to focus. He did not recognize me. He probably thought I was Paul, or a delivery man. Who is it?" he rasped. But I recognized him. Oh God. I recognized him. Beneath the sickness, beneath the decades, it was the same mouth that had lied to me. The same bone structure that had smiled as he shook my hand and promised me the world. It was my greatest enemy. The man who had haunted my nightmares for 30 years. The man who had ruined me. And he was living here. The rage that had been simmering for the whole drive erupted. It was so pure, so cold, it burned. I did not feel sadness. I did not feel shock. I felt a clarity I had not felt in 30 years. Caroline. Her tears were a lie. Her grief was a lie. Her trips were a lie. Her entire life with me was a lie. Paul and Beth. Their concern was a lie. Their plan to sell it was not about money. It was about this. It was about getting rid of him now that Caroline, his protector, was gone. Vincent's eyes widened. The confusion was fading. A flicker of recognition, then terror. "Owen," he whispered. His voice was a dry rattle of dead leaves. "Oh my God. Owen." His voice was a dry rattle of dead leaves. "Owen. Oh my God. Owen." He thought I was Paul, or Beth. He thought I was one of his caretakers. The shock on his face wasn't just recognition. It was the terror of a ghost seeing a ghost. My mind was a white-hot blank. I took one step into the room, then another. I could feel the grit from the porch on the soles of my shoes. "You're alive," I said. It wasn't a question. It was a damnation. Vincent flinched. He tried to sink deeper into my armchair. This frail, skeletal, pathetic creature. This was the man who had ripped my life apart. This was the man Caroline had cried over. This was the man who was supposed to be a pile of bones in Bolivia. I, he stammered, his watery eyes darting toward the door, as if he could somehow escape me. Paul didn't say. He didn't say you were coming. Dead, I said, my voice a low growl that I did not recognize. You were dead. 25 years. Dead in Bolivia. That was the story. That was the lie. Owen, please, he whimpered. He raised a shaking, paper-thin hand. Please. I can explain. Explain! I roared. I took 2 more steps and I was towering over him. The smell of his sickness, of old cigarettes and unwashed fear filled my nostrils. Explain what? Explain the $200,000. Explain my company. Explain the 10 years I spent in Chicago working 18-hour days to pay off the debts you left me with. Explain how you're sitting in my house, in my chair, breathing my air, when you're supposed to be dead. He was trembling violently now, a full-body tremor that rattled his bones. The coughing fit seized him again, a deep racking sound that bent him in half. He was pathetic, and I felt nothing. No pity. Only ice. Please, he gasped, spitting into an old handkerchief. Owen, sit. Please, you're going to give yourself a heart attack. Don't you talk to me about hearts, I hissed. You start at the beginning, you start with Bolivia. There was no Bolivia, he whispered, his eyes on the floor. I made that up. I fed Caroline the story, years later, when I needed her to tell you something, so you would never ever look for me. The confession hung in the air. He made it up. He and Caroline, a team. I took the money, Owen, he said, his voice small and the voice of a child confessing to stealing a cookie. I took it. I had a plan, an investment. It was supposed to be foolproof. In South America, commodities. It was supposed to double our money in 6 months. I was going to put it all back. And more. You would have been rich. We all would have been. Foolproof, I repeated. The word tasted like acid. It wasn't, he whispered. The deal, it went bad. The men I was with, they weren't good people. They took everything. Not just your money, Owen. My money, too. Everything I had. They left me. They left me with nothing. In Venezuela. So you ran, I said, finishing the story. You vanished. I had to. They thought I was in on it. They thought I had hidden the money. They were going to kill me. And I was ashamed. I couldn't come back. I couldn't face you. I couldn't face Caroline. I couldn't face what I had done to you. To us. He was crying now. Small, weak, self-pitying tears. They did nothing to me. So I drifted. He continued, his voice a rasp. I worked odd jobs. Under the table. I was a ghost. For years. I got sick. My lungs, the doctors said it was bad. I had no money. No insurance. I was dying, Owen. For real this time. I stood there, arms crossed. I felt nothing. I was a block of granite. And then, I prompted, you decided to come home. He nodded, not meeting my eyes. 2 years. 2 years after I left. I was desperate. I had nowhere else to go. I knew you'd never forgive me. I knew you hated me. But Caroline, she's my sister. She was my sister. Blood. My heart stopped. 2 years after. 28 years ago. That was when I was in the depths of hell in Chicago. That was when I was working 2 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night. That was when I was missing my children's birthdays. "You came back," I whispered. I found her," he said. "I called her from a payphone. I begged her, Owen, just to see me, just to talk. She met me at a diner. She didn't recognize me at first. I was so sick, so thin." He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "I begged her, Owen. I didn't ask for money. I asked her for a place to die. A place to die." He wheezed again, as if those 4 words should absolve him of everything, as if his suffering was a currency that could buy my forgiveness. I just stared at him. The man was a stranger, a parasite. "And she agreed?" I asked. "The woman whose life you destroyed, the woman whose husband you bankrupted, she just said yes. It wasn't that simple." He whimpered, twisting the handkerchief in his lap. She was angry. Oh God, she was angry. She hit me. Right there in the diner. Slapped me across the face so hard my ears rang. She screamed at me. She called me everything you ever did. A monster. A thief. A nothing. "Good," I said, my voice flat. For once she told the truth. "But I begged," he said, his voice cracking. "I showed her the medical papers, the x-rays, the spots on my lungs. I told her I had maybe 6 months. I told her I didn't want to die in a shelter, on the street, alone. I kept saying I was her brother. I was blood." He looked up at me, his eyes pleading for me to understand. "Blood, Owen, that's all I had left, and it was all that mattered to her." I felt the last bit of warmth in my chest extinguish. Blood. She sat there for an hour. He continued, lost in the memory, just staring at me, and I could see her fighting. And then she just nodded. She said, "There's one place on earth I know he will never go. One place he hates, more than he hates you. My own house, my home, the place I had built with my own hands, the monument to my greatest failure." She hadn't seen it as a graveyard. She had seen it as a safe house. She had taken the very trauma he had inflicted on me, and she had weaponized it. She had used my pain as a lock, as a shield, to hide her betrayal. It was brilliant. It was diabolical. "She brought me here," he whispered. "That night, in the dark. She used her old key, the one her parents gave her. She said, 'Stay here, Vincent. Don't go out. Don't be seen. And I will take care of this.' Take care of this," I repeated. The words were mechanical. "You mean the bills?" She set up an account, a local bank, First Coast Community. She put money in it for the taxes, for the utilities, so it would all just run automatically, so no one would ask questions. "What money, Vincent?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. The blood was roaring in my ears. "Where did my wife, a woman with no job of her own, get the money to pay for your 30-year vacation?" He flinched. It, it was household money, Owen. From you. From Chicago. She skimmed it. A little bit. Every month. Just a little bit here, a little bit there. You were working so hard. You were making so much. She said you'd never notice. And you didn't. For 30 years, you never noticed. I had to grab the back of the sofa. The floor was unsteady. Every 18-hour day. Every missed school play. Every lonely dinner I ate at my desk in Chicago. I wasn't just rebuilding my life. I was funding his. I was paying for his electricity. I was paying for his food. I was paying for his high-speed fucking internet. My sweat. My sacrifice. My pain. It had all been funneled, laundered, by my own wife, to the very man who had caused it all. The ultimate horrifying, sickening truth finally settled on me. Caroline. My Caroline. She had never really hated him. The tears she cried in my arms, the curses she spat. That was the performance, not the trips. The trips were real. She had chosen. Faced with her ruined husband or her traitor brother, she chose blood. She chose him. And she had lied to me every single day for 30 years. Every I love you, every shared smile, every moment of our rebuilt life in Chicago was a lie. She wasn't my partner. She was his protector. And I was just the man who paid for it all. My hand was clenched so tight I could feel my fingernails biting into my palm. The pain was distant, a small sharp anchor in the storm that was raging in my head. I was looking at this thing, this parasite in my chair. But the betrayal of Caroline, that was an abyss. I was falling, and I had to know if my children were in that abyss with her. I looked at him, this skeletal ghost of my enemy. Paul, I said. My voice was a dry rasp. And Beth. Vincent's watery, clouded eyes refused to meet mine. He stared down at the worn, dirty fabric of his robe. He knew what I was going to ask. Did they know? The silence in the room was absolute. There was only the sound of the distant surf and the rattling of Vincent's shallow breathing. He hunched his shoulders, a small, pathetic gesture of defense. Look at me, I commanded. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the stale, smoky air like a razor. He flinched. Slowly, agonizingly, he raised his head. His eyes were swimming in a sea of self-pity and terror. And in that look, I had my answer. The last foundation of my life. My children. The very reason I had rebuilt everything, turned to sand and sifted through my fingers. They know, he whispered. How long, I demanded. It was not a question. It was the demand for a final killing fact. A while now, he stammered. Not from the beginning. No, not like she did. When they were kids, they just thought the house was closed up. They didn't know. How long, Vincent? He swallowed. The sound was audible. 10, maybe 12 years. Since they were older. Since Paul was in his 30s. 10 or 12 years. Not children. They were not children talked into a secret. They were adults. Grown men and women with their own lives, their own morals. They were adults when they learned the truth. And they had chosen to lie. For over a decade, they had sat at my table. They had eaten my food. They had taken my money for their college tuitions, their first cars, the down payments on their own homes. They had looked me in the eye, at Thanksgivings, at Christmases, at their mother's funeral. They had stood by her casket, weeping, knowing that the man who had destroyed my life, the man I thought was dead, was alive and well, living comfortably just a 12-hour drive away on my dime. Why? I choked out. Why tell them wasn't lying to me enough for her? She needed help. Vincent said, his voice pleading as if I should understand. She couldn't handle it all herself anymore. The driving, the logistics. She was getting older. And I was getting sicker. And he painted the picture for me. Caroline, my wife, sitting down with our adult son and daughter. I have something to tell you about your Uncle Vincent. He's not dead. He's living in the beach house. And I need your help. Help, I repeated. The word tasted like ash. Just with supplies, he explained, as if this made it better. Groceries, medicines. They would come when she couldn't make the trip. They had the password for the online accounts, to pay the bills, the internet, the power, the ones I couldn't pay myself. Martha Henderson's voice echoed in my head. Sometimes your children, too, dropping off groceries. Such a good, decent family. Paul's voice sharp and panicked in the lawyer's office. It's dangerous. The road is washed out. Beth's voice shrill and false. We're doing this for you, Daddy. We know you despise that place, the sheer, calculated, breathtaking cruelty of it. They weren't just lying. They were acting. They were performing a play. A long 10-year performance of the loving, concerned children. All while they were active participants in my humiliation. They were their mother's accomplices. They were his caretakers. They didn't want to, Vincent added as if it mattered. At first, Paul was angry. He said what I did to you was unforgivable. He argued with his mother. He told her she had to tell you. But he didn't, I stated. The ice was spreading from my chest to my limbs. No, Vincent whispered. No, because Caroline, she made them promise. Promise what? To protect her. She told them, if you ever found out, you would leave her, that you would hate her, that it would destroy the family. She made them swear on their love for her that they would never ever tell you. She said she was protecting you, Owen, protecting you from the hurt, from the truth, from the lie was so profound, so twisted, it was almost beautiful in its monstrosity. They were betraying me to protect me. They were enabling my enemy out of love for me. So they promised, I said, the last bit of my old life turning to glass and shattering. They promised their mother. They chose her. They chose you over me, over the truth. They were trapped, Owen. What could they do? It was their mother's wish. She was lying, I said. And they were helping. The puzzle was complete, and the picture it formed was grotesque. It was a portrait of my entire family, Caroline, Paul, Beth, all standing together, their arms linked, and me, on the outside, looking in, the fool, the provider, the clueless old man, the man who just paid for it all. I stood there in that cluttered, smoke-filled room, the air thick with the smell of his sickness. Vincent had stopped talking. He was just watching me, waiting for me to explode, waiting for me to call the police, waiting for the final judgment. But I was not looking at him. I was seeing everything. The last 30 years, the last 10 years, the last 3 months. It all snapped into place, the jagged, broken pieces of my life forming a single horrifying picture. It was suddenly perfectly clear. Paul's voice in that sterile lawyer's office. It's time to sell, Dad. It's rotting. Beth's voice dripping with false sympathy. We're doing this for you, Daddy. To take this burden off your shoulders. Their urgency, their panic. The clumsy, stupid lies about storms and washed-out roads. It was not about the taxes. It was not about the insurance. It was not about sparing my feelings or getting money for the grandkids. It was about her. Caroline. For 30 years, she was the linchpin. She was the protector, the provider, the one who managed this grotesque secret. She had paid the bills. She had opened the secret bank account. She had managed the logistics of his existence. She had kept her traitor brother fed and sheltered and supplied with premium cable television. And then, she was gone. 3 months ago, we buried her. And in that moment, for Paul and Beth, everything changed. Their protector, their co-conspirator, the one who held the entire fragile arrangement together, was dead. The money pipeline from Chicago, the household money she skimmed from me, was gone. The secret bank account was likely frozen or worse, in her name alone. The supplies had stopped. The entire elaborate 30-year charade was suddenly catastrophically unsustainable. My children. They had not been grieving. They had been panicked. They had inherited a problem named Vincent. A living, breathing, smoking, expensive secret, sitting in a house that did not belong to them. A house that belonged to me. They knew. For 10 years they had known. They were accomplices, and now the responsibility, his responsibility, had fallen squarely on their shoulders. They had to deal with the monster in the closet. But they couldn't just throw him out. He was their uncle. He was their mother's dying wish. And more importantly, he knew their secret. He knew they had been lying to me for a decade. He had leverage. So, they formed a plan. A quick, desperate, clumsy plan. We have to sell the house. It was the only solution. It was perfect. They would liquidate the asset. They would get rid of the evidence. They would sell my house. Take the money, give a significant chunk to Vincent to buy his silence, and ship him off to some cheap anonymous nursing home 1,000 miles away. And me, I would get the rest of the money none the wiser. I would just be the sad old widower grateful to my loving, dutiful children for handling the burden of my painful past. The plan was flawless, except for one thing. Me. I, the clueless old man. The grieving, fragile fool who was supposed to just stay in Chicago and sign the papers, had decided to come. My words in the lawyer's office echoed back to me. I want to go down there. One last time. Their reaction. No, it's dangerous. The foundation is compromised. It was not a lie to protect me from bad memories. It was a desperate, panicked attempt to stop me from finding the living, breathing proof of their decade-long betrayal. They were terrified I would show up. Right now. Before they could clean up the mess. Before they could evict the family skeleton. My children. My Paul. My Beth. They had not just lied. They had actively conspired against me. They had looked at their mother's grave, and instead of feeling grief, they had seen a logistical nightmare. Their immediate calculated response to her death was not sorrow. It was damage control. They needed to sell this house not for me, but to hide their mother's 30-year sin and their own 10-year complicity. The whole thing. The whole rotten, disgusting, heartbreaking thing was finally hideously clear. I was the last person to know the truth about my own life. I pulled my phone from my pocket. Vincent flinched violently. His entire body recoiled into the chair. His watery eyes widened in pure animal terror. What are you doing?" he hissed, his voice a dry panic. You're calling the police, Owen, no. Please, don't. Please, I'm a sick man, I'm dying. They can't put me in jail. Not like this. Please, he started to cough again, a desperate choking sound as he tried to get up to plead. I looked at him. The man who had stolen my life, my savings, and 30 years of my marriage. The man who had turned my wife and children into liars. He was begging me not to call the police. I laughed. It was not a nice sound. It was cold. It was brittle. It was the sound of something that had been frozen solid for 30 years, finally breaking. Police, I said, my voice dangerously calm. No, Vincent. I'm not calling the police. Not yet. I held the phone up so he could see the screen. I'm doing something much, much worse. I found the contact in my phone. My son, Paul. I pressed the name. I'm calling your caretakers, as I said. I'm calling the liars. I'm calling my son. Vincent's face crumpled in confusion, and then a new, deeper horror dawned as he realized what I was doing. I pressed the speakerphone button. The icon lit up. The phone began to ring. Once. The sound echoed in the stale, silent room. Twice. On the third ring, he picked up. His voice was exactly as it had been in the lawyer's office. Efficient, impatient, slightly annoyed to be bothered. Hey, Dad. What's up? I thought you were in Wisconsin. I smiled. A cold, thin smile. Vincent watched me, his mouth open. His breathing stopped. Hello, Paul, I said. My voice was light, almost cheerful. Funny story. I wasn't feeling Wisconsin, so I decided to come to the beach house instead. Silence. Not just any silence. It was a complete digital void. A bottomless pit of absolute dead air panic. I could picture him, in his expensive Chicago office, his hand frozen on his mouse, the blood draining from his face. Paul, I asked, feigning concern. You still there? I said. I'm at the beach house. I heard a faint, sharp gasp in the background. It sounded like Beth. Dad. Paul's voice was a strained, strangled whisper. It was a voice I had never heard before. What did you say? Where are you? I'm at the house, son, I said, letting my voice fill the room. The house you told me was rotting. The one with the washed-out road. I walked slowly across the living room, my footsteps heavy on the floorboards. I stood right in front of Vincent. And you were wrong about the road, Paul. It's perfectly fine. And the house? It's not rotting at all. It's quite lived in, actually. Vincent was shaking his head, his hands clasped together as if in prayer, silently begging me to stop. I did not. Dad. Wait, Paul was stammering. Wait, don't go in there. It's not safe. I meant there are squatters. That's it, squatters. Get out of there, Dad. Just get in your car and leave. We'll handle it. Squatters, I said, looking directly into Vincent's terrified, milky eyes. No, Paul. It's not a squatter. It seems to be family. What? What are you talking about? There's a man here, I said. He was sitting in my chair, drinking coffee, watching my ocean. He's an older man. Looks pretty sick, to be honest. But the strangest thing, Paul, he says his name is Vincent. I heard a crash on the other end, like a phone being dropped. Then a muffled scream. Beth. He's there. Oh my God, he's there, Paul. He found him. I heard Paul fumbling for the phone. Dad, he shouted. His voice was no longer a whisper. It was a raw, panicked yell. "Dad, listen to me. Don't do anything. Don't say anything. Just wait. We're coming. Do you hear me? Coming where, Paul? To Wisconsin. I'm in North Carolina. We're coming there. We're leaving right now. We'll be there in 12 hours. Just sit. Don't call the police. Don't hurt him. He's a sick old man. Just wait for us." "Hurt him?" I asked, my voice full of false innocence. "Why would I hurt him?" He says he's your Uncle Vincent, my wife's brother, the one who's been dead for 25 years. I let the words hang in the air. "Paul," I said into the silence. "Beth. You knew about this, didn't you? You knew your mother was lying to me. You knew he was here. You've been—" "What was it Martha Henderson said?" "Dropping off groceries." A choked sob came from the phone. "Beth. Daddy. Please stop. We can explain. It's not what it looks like. We were protecting Mom. We were protecting you." "Protecting me," I said. My voice dropped, the ice returning. "Protecting me. Don't do anything," Paul yelled, his voice cracking with desperation. "Don't talk to him. Don't let him leave. And don't call the police. We're getting in the car. We're on our way. Just, please. Dad, wait." The line went dead. He hung up. I lowered the phone. I looked at Vincent. He was pale as a sheet, his body rigid in the chair. He had heard every word. He had heard the panic. He had heard his protectors, his caretakers, his accomplices, utterly and completely exposed. "Well," I said, sliding the phone back into my pocket. "It seems they're on their way." I turned my back on him. I didn't care if he ran. I didn't care if he tried to call someone. He had nowhere to go. His world had just ended. I walked out of the stale, sick-smelling house and onto the front porch. My porch. The one I had built. The air was thick with salt. I could hear the waves crashing on the beach, a relentless rhythmic sound. Boom. Crash. The same sound as 30 years ago. The sound of my life breaking apart. I pulled one of the old wooden rocking chairs, my rocking chair, away from the wall and sat down. I looked out at the ocean. It was a flat, angry gray mirroring the cold, dead thing in my chest. They said 12 hours, Chicago to Outer Banks. If they drove like maniacs, maybe 10. I sat, and I waited. Vincent stayed inside, cowering. I could see his silhouette through the dirty glass of the window, a frail shadow in the gloom. He didn't dare come out. He didn't make a sound. He was a prisoner, and he knew it. And I was the warden. The sun began its long, slow descent. It was 3 o'clock, then 4. In that agonizing, silent stretch of time with the salt spray settling on my skin, I finally let myself think. I let the full, crushing weight of the 30-year lie settle on me. Caroline. Every memory I had of her for the last 3 decades was now tainted. Every "I love you" was a performance. Every shared meal, every anniversary, every quiet evening we spent in Chicago. She was thinking of him. She was protecting him. I thought of her tears, the ones she cried when she told me he was dead in Bolivia. Were they tears of grief, or were they tears of relief? Relief that her lie was now perfect, that I would never look, that she was finally truly safe to carry on her secret life. The thought made me physically sick. I thought of the money. My money. The money I earned from those 18-hour days. The exhaustion that settled into my bones and never left. The youth I sacrificed. I had missed Paul's first home run. I had missed Beth's lead in the school play. I was an absence in their childhood. And for what? So my wife could skim my paycheck to buy high-speed internet and premium cable for the man who had put me in that position. The rage was no longer a hot, blinding fire. It was something else. It was deeper, colder. It was the absolute crushing cold of deep space. It was a pure, clarifying ice. It froze my grief. It froze my pain. It left only resolve. 5 o'clock. The sun began to dip, painting the clouds in shades of angry orange and purple. And my children. Paul and Beth. I remembered Beth, age 12, crying because I missed her piano recital. "You're never here, Daddy," she had cried. And I had held her, my heart breaking with guilt. I had told her I was sorry. I had told her I was working so hard for her, for their future. And she, for the last 12 years, she had known. She had known what her mother was doing. She had participated. She had dropped off groceries. She had helped pay the bills for this parasite. She had looked me in the eye, knowing the entire foundation of our family was a rotten, disgusting lie. And Paul, my son, the practical one, the one I taught to read a balance sheet. He had been complicit. He had guarded his mother's secret. He had lied to his own father. The hypocrisy of it all was staggering. They protected me from the truth, while actively participating in the betrayal. 6 o'clock. The sky was a deep, bruised purple. The air grew chill. I sat in the rocker, back and forth, back and forth. The old wood creaked. It was the only sound besides the ocean. I was not the grieving widower. I was not the confused old man. I was a judge and a jury, and court was about to be in session. 7 o'clock. 8 o'clock, 9. Darkness, complete and total. I sat there on the porch in the pitch black. I didn't turn on a light. I heard the car before I saw its headlights. A frantic sound. An engine being pushed too hard. It came tearing down the dirt road, spitting gravel. Headlights swept across the yard, blinding me. The car, a high-end SUV, skidded to a stop, its tires digging into the sandy soil. The doors flew open. They fell out of the car. Paul, Beth. They looked insane. Their hair was wild. Their clothes, their expensive Chicago clothes, were rumpled from a desperate 12-hour non-stop drive. They saw me, a dark shape rocking slowly in the shadows of the porch. "Dad?" Beth's voice was a terrified squeak. "Daddy, are you there?" "I'm here, Beth," I said. My voice was calm. It was the calm of the ice. They both rushed toward the steps, their faces pale and ghostly in the dim light from the car's headlights. "Oh my God, Dad!" Paul panted, his hands raised as if approaching a wild animal. "Dad, listen. Just let us explain. Please, it's not what it looks like." I stopped rocking. "Not what it looks like," I said. "It looks like my children have been lying to my face for over a decade. It looks like my wife betrayed me every single day for 30 years. It looks like—" I jerked my head toward the dark window behind me where I could still see Vincent's terrified shadow. "It looks like my greatest enemy has been living in my house, on my money." "Please, Daddy," Beth sobbed, collapsing onto the bottom step. "Please, we're sorry. We're so sorry." I just looked at them. The two people I loved most in the world. My children. "Sorry," I said. "Sorry isn't the word we're going to use tonight." They scrambled out of the SUV, stumbling in the sandy dirt. They looked like they had been through a war. Paul's expensive suit was rumpled beyond recognition, his tie ripped off and stuffed in his pocket. Beth. Her eyes were wild, her makeup streamed in black rivers down her pale cheeks. They looked broken. Good. They stood in the harsh glare of their own headlights, breathing hard, staring at me. I did not move. I just sat there, rocking, a silent judge in the darkness. Beth was the first to break. She let out a sound, a terrible gasping wail. "Daddy!" she cried, her voice cracking. "Daddy, please!" She ran toward the steps and collapsed on the bottom one, burying her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook with huge theatrical sobs. "Daddy, we're sorry. We're so sorry." Paul followed his movements, jerky, uncoordinated. He stopped at the foot of the stairs, his hands raised, palms out. The universal sign of surrender, or the sign of someone trying to calm a lunatic. "Dad," he panted, his chest heaving. "Dad, just let us explain. Just give us a minute. This whole thing, it's not what you think." I stopped rocking. The creaking of the old wood ceased. The only sound was the ocean and Beth's desperate gulping sobs. "Not what I think," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the night air. "It looks like you've been lying to me. For 10 years. It looks like your mother betrayed me for 30. It looks like the man who destroyed my life is cowering behind that curtain." I nodded toward the window where Vincent's terrified skeletal shadow was pressed against the glass. "No!" Beth shrieked, looking up, her face a mess of tears and mascara. "No, it wasn't like that. You don't understand." "Then make me understand," I said. "Explain it to me. Explain the gigabit internet. Explain the air conditioning. Explain the 30 years of paid-up taxes. Explain him." "It was Mom," Paul said, his voice dropping, taking on a tone of pained, noble confession. "It was all Mom. We didn't know, not for years. We just found out." 10 years, I said. "Vincent told me. 10 or 12. You were not children, Paul. You were adults." Paul flinched, the lie dying on his lips. He saw he couldn't gaslight me. He switched tactics. "Yes," he admitted, his voice cracking. "Yes, okay. 10 years. But you don't understand why. We were trapped. We promised her." "Promised?" I repeated. The word was flat. "Yes," Beth cried, scrambling up the steps on her knees, grabbing at my pants leg. I flinched, pulling my leg away. "We promised Mom. We swore to her on her deathbed. Years before. She made us swear. Swear to what? Swear to lie to your own father. Swear to help her harbor a fugitive." "No," Paul said, his voice rising in desperation. "To protect you, Dad, she did it all. To protect you." I almost laughed. The audacity, the sheer magnificent gall of it. To protect me. From what? The truth. "Yes," Beth sobbed. "Yes, she didn't want you to be hurt. She knew. She knew what it would do to you if you found out. After everything. After how he hurt you. She said you'd never recover. That it would destroy you all over again. She was trying to spare you that pain, Daddy. It was an act of mercy. Mercy. They were calling this mercy. Using my money to feed my enemy. Lying to my face every day of my life. That was mercy. She was protecting me," I said, my voice dangerously soft, "by making me the fool, by making me the man who paid for her brother's comfortable 30-year retirement. The man who paid for his HBO. It wasn't, it wasn't like that, Paul insisted, his voice pleading. He was sick, Dad. He was dying. He came to her. He was desperate. He had nothing. She couldn't let her own brother die on the street. She wasn't like that. She was a good person. She was just torn. Torn, I said, between her husband and the man who bankrupted him. And she chose. She chose you, Beth shrieked, her voice frantic. She chose you every day by not telling you she was terrified, Daddy. She was afraid. Afraid of what? I asked, though I knew the answer. She was afraid you would leave her. Beth finally cried out, the ultimate excuse, the final twisted piece of their narrative. She was terrified that if you found out she had helped him, even just a little, that if you knew he was alive, you wouldn't be able to look at her. That you would hate her. That you would divorce her. She couldn't lose you, Dad. She loved you too much. She did it all. This whole terrible secret. She did it because she was afraid of losing you. So there it was, the final betrayal, in their story, in the lie they had all agreed upon. I was the villain. I was the cold, unforgiving man who would abandon his wife. My anticipated unloving reaction was the reason for their conspiracy. They had lied to me, to protect themselves from me. I stood up. Beth scrambled back, startled. Paul tensed. I looked at them. My 2 children, weeping, lying, pathetic strangers, and I felt nothing. The ice in my chest was absolute. You're done, I asked. I stood there on the dark porch, looking down at my sobbing 42-year-old daughter, kneeling at my feet. I looked at my 45-year-old son standing there pale and sweating, trying to sell me one last desperate, pathetic lie. You were afraid. I would leave her. I let the words hang in the air. You did all this to protect me from being hurt. I started to laugh. It was not a warm sound. It was a dry, rasping noise like old dead leaves scraping across pavement. It was the sound of 30 years of ice cracking. It was the sound of a fool finally understanding the punchline to a joke that had been told his entire life. Hurt? I said, the laugh stopping as suddenly as it began. My voice dropped, the cold returning. You were worried about hurting me. I took a step toward them. Beth flinched. I pointed a trembling finger at Paul, then at Beth. You let me work 18-hour days in Chicago. You let me sacrifice my entire life, digging our family out of a hole. And all that time, you knew your mother was siphoning my money, to feed him. I jerked my head toward the dark window, toward the terrified shadow of Vincent. You used my money to pay the bills for my greatest enemy in my own house, a house I built. You did that for 10 years. Dad, it was Mom's money too. Paul stammered, a weak attempt to find a foothold. Was it? I shot back. Was it really? Did she work the construction sites? Did she miss your childhoods? Or did she just hold out her hand while I filled it? You sat at my table. You ate my food. You looked me in the eye, after dropping off groceries for the man who ruined me. And you have the audacity to stand there and talk to me about being hurt. Beth was just weeping, incoherent. I'm sorry. We promised, Mom. Paul. He tried to regain control. He was a businessman, after all. This was just a negotiation, a hostile takeover that had gone horribly wrong. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. He put his hand on Beth's shaking shoulder. "Dad," he said, his voice low, trying to sound reasonable, trying to sound like the adult in the room. "Dad, calm down. Please. You're absolutely right. Okay. You're right. We screwed up. We lied. It was a terrible situation. We know, but..." He took a deep, shuddering breath. "It's done. What's done is done, Mom. Mom is gone. The secret, it's out. Now. We have to fix it." "Fix it," I repeated. My voice was flat. Empty. "Yes. Fix it. Logically. We can solve this. Right now, tonight." He was trying to sound strong, like he was presenting a solution in a boardroom. "Here's what we do. Tomorrow morning I'll make some calls. There are homes, places. We'll find a decent nursing home for Uncle Vincent. A nice one. We'll get him settled. We'll take care of him. Far away from here. Far away from you." He was talking fast now, warming to his own plan. He was managing the problem. "We get him out of here. We clean the place up. We call the realtor just like we planned. We sell the house. We get the money. We can split it. We can give you the biggest share. Of course, all of it, whatever you want. We just put this whole nightmare behind us." He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Dad, doesn't that sound good? We can just erase it. It will be over. We can be a family again." He looked so hopeful, so desperate for me to take the easy way out, to take the money, to make the problem, his problem, disappear so he could go back to his clean, comfortable, respectable life in Chicago. I let the silence stretch. I looked at Beth, who had stopped crying and was now looking at me with a pathetic, desperate shred of hope. I looked at Paul, the dealmaker, the fixer of inconvenient truths. Then I looked past them at the dark outline of the house. My house. The prison Caroline had built for me. The sanctuary she had built for him. "No," I said. Paul's face faltered. "No, what do you mean, no? I've changed my mind," I said, my voice as cold and flat as the ocean in front of me. "I've changed my mind about everything." "Dad, what are you talking about?" I turned my gaze back to my children, my liars, my accomplices. "We are not selling this house." Paul and Beth just stared at me. The look on their faces, it was pure, uncomprehending confusion. This was not in their script. The old man was not following his lines. Their quick, desperate plan to fix everything, to hide the problem, sell the evidence, and cash the check, had just hit a wall. And that wall was me. Paul opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at Beth, but she was useless, her face a mask of tear-streaked panic caught in the high beams of the SUV. "Dad, what does that mean?" Paul finally stammered, taking a hesitant step forward. "What do you mean, no? We have to sell it. It's the only way to clean this up." I let the silence hang in the cold, salty air. I looked past them at the dark house where the shadow of Vincent was still frozen behind the glass. Then I looked back at my two children, my betrayers. Slowly, I pushed myself up from the rocking chair. My knees cracked, the only sound in the night. I was not the stooped, grieving widower they had put in that lawyer's office. I felt tall. I felt a power I hadn't realized I possessed. The power of the truth. "Vincent," I said, my voice clear and carrying in the night air. "He's not going anywhere. He's staying. Right here." Beth let out a small, strangled gasp. Paul's face twisted in disbelief. "Dad, what are you talking about? Stay here, you hate him. He destroyed you." He took another hesitant step toward me, a new, desperate, confused hope in his eyes. Are you forgiving him? Is that what this is mercy?" Mercy. The word was so absurd, so completely wrong. He was still looking for the easy answer, the emotional loophole. He was looking for the weak, grieving old man he thought I was. I laughed. That same cold, dry sound from before. "Forgive him," I said. "No, Paul. I will never forgive him. And I will never forgive your mother. And I will never forgive you." Then why?" Beth whispered, her voice trembling. "Why would you let him stay?" "Oh, Beth," I said. I took a step toward the edge of the porch, looking down on them. "You misunderstand completely. This isn't forgiveness. This is punishment." They just stared, blank. "This house," I said, gesturing to the dark structure behind me. "The one you were so desperate to sell. The one your mother used as a secret sanctuary. From now on, this house is a prison." I pointed a long, steady finger at the shadow in the window. "He is the prisoner." I turned my gaze to Paul and Beth. Their faces were frozen in the dim light. "And you two," I said, pointing my finger directly at them. "You are the jailers." "Dad, I don't understand," Paul said, his voice shaking. "Jailers, what are you talking about?" What does that mean?" "It means, Paul," I said, walking down the steps, forcing them to back away from me, "that you two were so very worried about this burden, this drain. You were so concerned about the taxes and the insurance. You were so worried about poor, sick Uncle Vincent and what to do with him now that his protector is gone." We were," Beth stammered. "Good," I said, "because that burden, it's all yours now." "What?" "From this moment, from right now, you two," I said, looking from Paul to Beth, "are 100%, completely, financially responsible for that man in that house." Paul just shook his head, like he was trying to clear water from his ears. "No, Dad, we can't. We don't have that kind of—" "You will find it," I commanded. "You will pay for everything. His food, his medicine, what was it, Cody? The platinum package, the 500 channels. You will pay for his HBO. You will pay for his gigabit internet. You will pay the power bill to run his air conditioning, the one he's been enjoying for 30 years on my money. You will pay the county taxes on time every quarter. You will pay for his prescriptions. You will pay for the groceries you've been dropping off for the last 10 years. Only this time, you won't be using your mother's secret stash. You won't be skimming from me." I leaned in close to my son. "You will pay for it, with your own money, from your jobs, from your bank accounts. Not one more cent of my money will ever go to feeding the man who stole my life." "Dad, that's insane," Paul yelled, his panic turning to anger. We can't afford that. We have mortgages. We have kids. We'll be ruined." "Welcome to the club," I snapped. "You think I cared about mortgages when he bankrupted me? You think I got to see my kids?" "You will find a way. You'll sell that expensive car, Paul. You'll stop the vacations, Beth. You'll— what's it called? You'll manage your finances. You'll accept responsibility. You will do whatever it takes. Because this is your inheritance. This is what your sainted mother left you. A sick, broke, parasitic old man. He is your problem now, not mine. But we'll just leave, Paul threatened. We'll walk away. You can't make us. Oh, can't I? I asked. This was the best part, the part I had been saving. You can't walk away because I'm not selling the house. Beth's face completely crumpled. The fake, practiced sympathy was gone, replaced by the raw, ugly panic of a cornered animal. Daddy, no! She shrieked, her voice cracking. You can't, you just can't. We don't have that kind of money. Paul's right. We have kids, we have mortgages, we have lives. It would ruin us. You're trying to ruin us. She was sobbing again. But these were not the crocodile tears from the lawyer's office. This was the real desperate sound of a person watching her comfortable, curated life evaporate. I looked at her, my face like stone. I don't care. Those 3 words shut her down. The sobs stopped in her throat, replaced by a choked, hiccuping gasp. I don't care about your mortgage, I continued, my voice flat and cold. I don't care about your vacations or your kids' private schools. You didn't care about my life when you were helping your mother spend my money to feed the man who ended mine. So no, I don't care. I turned my gaze to Paul. He was pale, shaking his head in disbelief. Dad, this is monstrous. It's blackmail. It's justice, I snapped. It's consequences. Something your mother and I clearly failed to teach you. So consider this your final lesson. I laid out the terms of their new life. I will retain 100% ownership of this house. It stays in my name, forever. It is my asset. And you too, my loving, dutiful children, you will be its caretakers. I saw Paul's mind working, trying to find a loophole. And how would you even know? He challenged, his voice weak. You live in Chicago. You hate this place. Oh, Paul, I sighed. You're still not getting it. I will get statements. I will hire a local property manager, someone I pay to check in. I will receive copies of every single bank transfer. I want to see the receipt for every bag of groceries. I want to see the cleared check for the power bill. I want to see the cable bill, paid in full, especially the HBO. I want to see the prescription receipts from the pharmacy. And if I find out, if I even suspect, that he has missed a single meal, or that the heat has been turned off to save a few dollars, or that you have failed in your family duty in any way. I let the threat hang in the air. What? Beth whispered, her eyes wide with terror. What? What will you do, Daddy? I smiled. A cold, thin, terrible smile. I will make one phone call. I will call the police. Paul scoffed, a desperate, hollow sound. And say what? That we didn't pay a cable bill. That's not a crime, Dad. No, son, I said, walking right up to him, forcing him to meet my eyes. Not about the cable bill. I'll call them about him. I jerked my head toward the dark house where Vincent's shadow was still frozen at the window. I'll call them, and I'll tell them that the man who defrauded me of $200,000, which by my calculation is about $700,000 in today's money, is sitting right inside my house. I'll tell them that the felon who committed grand larceny and wire fraud 30 years ago is right there. Paul's face went white. He knew the law. He was a businessman. The statute of limitations, he stammered. Dad, it's been 30 years. That's long gone. You can't touch him. Can't I? I asked, feigning curiosity. Fraud is a tricky thing, Paul. Especially when the criminal flees the state. The clock can stop. The clock can reset. Are you willing to bet your Uncle Vincent's freedom on that? Are you willing to spend your own money on lawyers? To argue about the statute of limitations for a sick, broke old man who is provably guilty? I didn't wait for an answer. But you're right. That could get complicated. So let's make it simpler. Let's not talk about his crime. Let's talk about yours. Beth let out a small, terrified sound. Yours, I repeated, looking from one to the other. For 10 years, maybe 12. You two, adults, have been aiding and abetting a known fugitive. You have actively, financially, and logistically concealed a felon to help him evade justice. You used my own stolen money to do it, which is a whole other crime. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper. The statute of limitations on that, well, that hasn't run out at all, has it? In fact, you were actively committing that crime right up until I opened that door today. Aiding and abetting, conspiracy, accessory after the fact. Those are ugly words. They look even uglier on an indictment, especially for a respectable businessman and a loving mother. Paul looked like he was going to be sick. He put his hand on the side of the SUV to steady himself. You would send your own children to prison. Beth wept, her body shaking. You helped your mother create this mess, I said, my voice hard as steel. You helped her protect him. You promised her you would keep her secret, her 30-year lie. Well, congratulations. Now you get to keep that promise, in perpetuity. You will protect him. You will pay for him. You will take care of him until the day he finally dies. You will clean up the mess your sainted mother left you. I looked at them. My children. Broken, defeated, trapped. They were chained to him. They were chained to this house. They couldn't sell it because I owned it. And they couldn't abandon him because if they did, I would make one phone call. And their lives, their comfortable, respectable suburban lives, would be over. Paul had his head down, leaning against the car, utterly defeated. Beth was just a heap on the bottom step, sobbing into her hands. I had won. They had no more moves. I had taken the board. I looked at them one last time. The strangers who had shared my name. I felt nothing. No pity. No love, just an empty, cold, vast release. I turned my back on them. I did not go to my old car. I did not need it. I just started walking. I walked down the long, dark dirt road, my footsteps steady on the gravel. I did not look back. I heard Beth call my name. Once. A desperate, dying wail. Daddy. I just kept walking. I reached the paved road where the streetlights of the town began. The air felt clean. I pulled out my phone. I did not call the police. I did not call a friend. I called a cab to take me to the airport in Norfolk. I was leaving the Outer Banks. This time I knew it was forever. I had left them there, all three of them, buried alive in the tomb they had built together. My justice was finally done. As I drove away from that house for the last time, I didn't feel hatred. I didn't feel sadness either. I felt peace. For 30 years, I had lived like a fool, deceived by the very people I loved the most. They thought I was a senile old man, too lost in grief to see the truth. But the truth, no matter how painful, is the only thing that set me free. Now Paul and Beth are trapped. They are shackled to the very secret their mother created and punished by their own lies. Sometimes justice isn't about forgiveness. Justice is about consequences. I learned a hard lesson at 70 years old, that you must always trust your gut. If something seems too perfect, too reasonable, it is almost always a lie. Did you like my story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.